So the Senate investigation into Russian collusion has come for Jill Stein. Now the the Washington Post, that's a weird slip there, reports that the Senate Intelligence Committee chairman, Republican from North Carolina, Richard Burr, has confirmed the investigation's new focus on Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein. Asked what the committee wanted to know about Stein's campaign, Burr responded, collusion with the Russians. So they're looking into Jill Stein and how she possibly colluded with the Russians. So this, to me, knowing what I know about Jill Stein, this is comical. Or at least it would be if it's not actually some sort of smear job / McCarthyite witch hunt.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten gross at this point, you know. And let's talk about what quote unquote evidence do they have as reason for this prying into Jill Stein. What they're pointing to is the fact that she appeared regularly on RT America, an American bureau. And, you know, we've talked a lot about RT and what they're going through. It is a witch hunt. It is a McCarthy attack. It is a xenophobic, gross narrative that they're going after American bureaus here in the United States, including RT America, including Sputnik, including Zhenghai, the Chinese outlet. And that's just the beginning. They're going to keep doing this. They've enacted the FARA Act, which was installed to prevent Nazism. Ironically enough, neo-Nazism is something we're just kind of passively accepting now in the United States.
We do have a president that's allied with neo-Nazis.
Yep, we sure do. And so it hasn't been enacted on media outlets for years and years. All of a sudden, we're seeing it happen again. I mean, this is one of those, like, first they came for the trade unionist moments. I mean, this is a really gross effect of the whole Russia quote-unquote investigation. I don't think it's really fair even calling it an investigation anymore. I mean, this has just gone way too far. And if you don't like Jill Stein, that's fine. You don't have to like Jill Stein. This isn't about whether or not you like Jill Stein. This is about, like, attacking people that are trying to participate in a democracy and basically saying you guys don't have the right to have it. And what is the evidence they're pointing at for this? They're pointing out the fact that Jill Stein went to an RT event in Moscow. She went on her own dime. She wasn't paid a penny to be there.
That's important because
she happened to be sitting at the same table as Putin
and Flynn. And by the way,
she was just sitting at a table.
Yeah. So, and the important thing here too is you said, like, she went on her own dime, right? She paid for it herself. Her whole thing is, hey, I want to talk to foreign leaders and I want to push my green agenda, right? That's what she's saying. She's like, so I'm gonna talk to whatever leader I can to try and push for nuclear disarmament and push for anti-war, to have them get out of Syria, which I think is great. I support all those stances. Now, the difference is Michael Flynn, he was actually paid to be there. So that's the difference there. And, of course, Michael Flynn has been – he's gotten in a little bit of trouble, let's just say that, in regards to his I guess, dealings with foreign governments, which there's definitely a lot of merit there. But when it comes to what's going on with Jill Stein, I don't see any merit. I mean, from what I see,
I'm not saying that all the works that have been done is totally off base. I think Trump is a shady oligarch that certainly has shady oligarch dealings all around the world, and that includes Russia, of course, you know, and that's why he's acting like a guilty party. Of course, he has shady business dealings. All oligarchs have that, you know, but when you see the cyclical effects of all this, the way independent media is being attacked, the way, you know, I mean, people accuse us over at the Jimmy Dore show of being Kremlin agents all the time. You know, I mean, it's getting ridiculous. This is a new Red Scare. This is new McCarthyism. We used to make fun of this stuff back in 2012. When Mitt Romney said something about Russia, Obama made fun of him. He said, hey, go back to the 1980s and give them their foreign policy back. You know, now all of a sudden we're amidst this new Red Scare. Yeah. And, you know, and it's because of the corporate media's hyper hyperbolization and overamplification of this whole thing instead of instead of waiting for actual evidence, which I don't think we're ever going to know for sure whether there was actual quote-unquote collusion or not. They're not even using the words collusion anymore. So I don't think we're ever going to know for sure one way or the other. And I think it's kind of just a waste of time as far as fighting Trump.
Let me slightly push back on that just a little bit. They are into Trump's bank accounts. Mueller is. That's got him. That's got President Trump acting like a very, very guilty/nervous party. So
yeah, because he's a shady oligarch.
He is.
Of course,
he
he's
is.
shady.
And
that doesn't mean he committed collusion to hijack an election.
We don't know yet.
That means he's a shady oligarch with shady business dealing. Yeah, we don't know yet.
We don't know the details.
Feeling we're never going to find out.
I personally, and I've said this plenty of times on the show before, I do believe that there's some sort of deal. I think it is a financial deal. And I think, and again, I don't have any evidence to back this up, and I want to make that plainly clear. I don't have the evidence, but I think that there probably was a financial deal. Yeah, it's possible that Trump owes Putin money because Putin's the only person that's going to loan to Trump because he's burned all those other bridges. Nobody else will loan him any money because he's an idiot. And
so do you think it was collusion?
It's possible, because I mean, if you look at what the president of another country could gain by having leverage over the president of the United States, look at the Russian sanctions that are still not put into effect. Whether you agree with the Russian sanctions or not, the fact is that Congress did vote them into office overwhelmingly. President Trump still refuses to even enact them like he's supposed to. Again, he won't enact them even, like if he vetoes the sanctions, he'll just be overridden. So he has to, and he still refuses to do so. Why would you do that?
I'm definitely with you on there's some shady business
Absolutely.
dealings. Now, yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody would be. I mean, yeah, like that's why when people are like, well, why is Trump acting guilty if he didn't? I'm like, Trump's a shady businessman that deals with oligarchs all around the world. I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, that's why all we've found out so far is just white collar oligarch commiseratings per usual. Like that's all we've found so far. And they've been investigating this stuff for well over a year. They're telling us it's going to take well over another year.
That's true.
I mean, what Donald Trump is this far ahead of every intelligence agency in the United States? I mean, maybe he is that clever of an idiot savant. Or somehow has evaded like all of these intelligence agencies. I find it incredibly hard to believe.
I just think, personally, I think they want to dot their I's and cross their T's. Mueller is I think in my opinion, he's a professional, and he wants to make sure that there is no stone unturned. And I think that does take time. But we can sort of disagree on this, but we can agree on a lot here.
Yeah, you have a little more optimism in this whole thing than I do.
For sure.
But we don't disagree that what's been going on as a cyclical effect of all this is absolutely disgusting. And this is just a power grab by the deep state. What's been happening to RT America, what's happening now to Jill Stein. And there's deep state interest in all this, and that's part of the conversation here. Chris Hedges wrote a brilliant article about it.
Yeah, this really just shows that, I mean, if anybody has, I mean, their evidence that they're using, right, which we see is her going to that, dinner, right, and sitting at the table.
Evidence, it's speculation,
right?
And that's why this is a test. I mean, this is a test. How little of a connection do people need? I mean, this is just the fact that they're going after Jill Stein now because she attended an event. You know who else? Like there's documented photos of them with Vladimir Putin, George W. Bush, Hillary Clinton. Like he's. Why would there not? I mean, who cares? And again, like that's irrelevant. But all of a sudden, this Jill Stein photo is somehow more controversial or more evident of something than anybody else. Why is that? Well, it's because she's a target. It's because, like there's incentive to go after people. It's just, this has become a xenophobic witch hunt as a cyclical effect of all this. And that's something that people, whether you still hold out faith that they're going to find actual collusion or not, whether you're more invested in Trump, Russia, or less invested, whether you want to see Trump impeached or don't want to see him impeached because Pence would be worse. Regardless of all that, you need to be cognizant of the cyclical effects of all this and denounce them at every turn. There are people that are members of the Hillary Clinton campaign calling Jill Stein a Russian agent. There are people that believe Bernie Sanders is a Russian spy. And that's become part of the mainstream narrative. These aren't just some fringe, folks on the internet out here. These are major, powerful people. Yeah, making these accusations that are, quite frankly, grossly wrong and immoral to make against somebody. You don't like Jill Stein, that's fine. You don't have to like Jill Stein. That's not what this is about. But to, I think, cross that line, I mean, this is just gone way too freaking far.
Yeah, basically, it's gotten to the point if you have anything to do with RT, then you're a Russian plant and you're a Russian agent. Yep. So what
Which
does that
not
mean?
True.
Tom Hartman, Lee Camp, Ed Schultz, and basically anybody who's ever been on RT. Larry King, Abby Martin.
Larry freaking King.
Abby Martin, who went and denounced Putin on the air, on RT, for the annexation of Crimea. She is a Russian plant because she was on RT, because she had worked for RT. That's preposterous. That is preposterous. Just because somebody works for RT or has shown up on RT, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that you are a Russian agent, that you are working on behalf of Russian interests. Interestingly enough, the Bureau of RT in America actually does some pretty good critiques of the American system.
Yeah, it's one of the better news networks out there. I mean, it's honestly, I mean, I watch RT a fair amount. It's one of the better news outlets out there domestically. RT America is, along with Democracy Now! and places like that. So yeah, I mean, this is a cyclical effect of a hysteria. And, is everything going on in the investigation connected to this hysteria? Maybe not. But this is a very amplified cyclical effect of this that I think is causing grossly more harm than good. And so far, that's all we have to show for it.
And not to get too conspiratorial on you, but this, I believe, okay, so this is from the Senate, right? This is the Senate Intelligence Committee probe, right? This actually is not connected to the Mueller probe. This is something that's completely different, and I want to make that distinction because I think it's important. Because look at who's leading this: Richard Burr, Republican from North Carolina, and also Mark Warner, who's a Democrat, right? From I forget where. Not really all that important, but they're leading this committee. The Democrats basically want to, paint Jill Stein as Russian agent that helped us lose the election to Donald Trump. That's their narrative. That's what they're going with. And Republicans basically want to take the heat off President Trump for any possible deal, at least in my mind, by trying to paint it as ridiculous as possible. So they're like, yeah, let's look into Jill Stein and we'll do a little fake out. I think. So, and it helps.
Well, I heard, to be fair here, I heard they were going to look into Gary Johnson too, but he didn't know where Russia was, so they just gave up.
Oh, yeah. And also, seriously, though, the other person that they're looking into is Hillary Clinton. The same probe is now looking into Russian ties between Putin and Hillary Clinton. So that just shows you what this investigation is about.
And it's getting ridiculous. Well, let me just pose you this question before let's look at it big picture here before we close the segment. And let me ask you this. Do you think that this whole Russia thing has helped the left at all?
You know what? No, I don't believe it. I don't believe it's, and I believe it's taken up a lot of space. It is important, I think, in my opinion, to report the news if there is anything substantial For example, Flynn, Manafort.
That's not what they
their
do.
Corruption.
That's not what they do.
Unfortunately, you're right. That is not what a lot of cable news tends to focus on.
They spend about 75% of their time at a minimum on this stuff. Chris Hayes, Rachel Maddow. If you take a shot of vodka every time Rachel Maddow says the word Russia, you will be dead within 5 minutes. That's applicable to all of her newscasts. So, yeah, I mean, and I agree with you. I would say no. And there's a lot of statistics out there that prove that. Whenever you talk about, whenever you hyperbolize Russia nonstop on the news, Trump's poll numbers typically go up. Whenever you get on him on policy, whenever you're talking about the tax bill, whenever you're talking about the AHCA, for instance, that's when his approval plummets. When you hit him on policy, his approval plummets. When you talk about Russia nonstop and speculate for 23 hours and 40 minutes a day, that's when his numbers actually go up. And when the tax bill was rolled out, that same day was the same day that there was an announcement regarding Flynn, and MSNBC, out of all of their headlines, they had one headline on their main headlines. They had 15 headlines about Flynn, 15. And then one thing about the tax bill at the very bottom. So, yeah, I mean,
and what's more important to the American people?
When you build a hysteria like this is what happens.
Yeah,
it becomes diluted. The theme becomes unclear. It's not even clear what exactly they're looking for at this point. They've moved the goalposts. It's not even just collusion anymore. There's still occasionally it's obstruction of justice, occasionally not. And I mean, they're completely going the wrong direction with this thing, it seems. I mean, unless there's a lot of stuff that maybe you and I don't know about, and I'm sure
there is.
I'm sure there's definitely stuff that they're not telling the public. Sure, of course, that's how this stuff works.
I think what they're looking for is, I mean, if you're going to run an investigation like this, I think what they're doing is they're targeting Trump's inner circle, Manafort, Flynn, Papadopoulos, all those people, in an effort to see if they know anything about him. It's basically getting these players to flip. And
how many?
And it's financial. And what they're looking at, and what's interesting to me about this, and it doesn't even have to really be about the collusion. I think it's more of financial crimes. I think that's what's interesting, because the investigation has already shown Flynn is an incredibly corrupt individual. Who has all sorts of money laundering schemes, just the people that Trump surrounds himself with, all tax evaders and money launderers.
Is this anything we didn't already know? I mean, yeah, maybe we didn't know the details of it, sure, but is this anything?
Well, I mean, we could definitely take a guess. If I came to you over
a year ago and I said, you know what, Trump's a shady guy that has dealings with
that
other
surrounds
oligarchs
himself with shady people.
He's doing a bunch of. Would you be like, no way? He's a nice man that runs a friendly casino. I just disagree with him, sir. Is that what you would have said?
No. Look,
exactly.
I think it's important to know that people that are in our government are criminals, and you can make the argument that most of them are. We just don't know what crimes they're actually committing. So I think it's important to know. But I think you're right in that it's completely off balance when it comes to the coverage, because we're not talking about issues, and we need to talk about issues. The tax bill is very important. As far as media consolidation, net neutrality, that was something that definitely needed more coverage, and I don't think it got enough coverage.
Well,
because these cable companies.
Where were you expecting them to cover it? I mean, Fox News,
right?
They don't care. CNN, same thing. MSNBC is owned by Comcast. Their owners don't want net neutrality. So that's why any coverage on MSNBC on net neutrality, you heard people like Rachel Maddow pretend like they don't understand what it is. Rachel Maddow's a Rhodes Scholar. She's a very, very intelligent woman. She understands what net neutrality is. But her paycheck was dependent on her pretending she doesn't. So that's what she did, along with pretty much any other reporter that covered it on MSNBC.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, that's a fair point. You're right. All of these different news outlets, they're not interested in covering important issues because there is a corporate motive. And I think the motive in oversaturating Russia is because there are, I guess, a lot of people that seem to be interested in hearing about it as far as clicking on it. Hillary Clinton, a lot of Hillary Clinton supporters, they're all up in it, right? They're deep into this investigation.
I honestly think it's a smaller group than you think.
But that small enough group is sustaining cable companies. You understand? Like most of their audience is older, 60, 70 years old. Those are people who went through the original Red Scare, and so they are very interested in hearing about this. A lot of millennials, they're not, because they're more interested in issues that are going to impact them. And so
that's a fair point.
Yeah, and so that's where we had the disconnect.
The fact that
pandering
when you have
to the audience,
profit-driven media, you know, it's another cyclical effect.
Yeah, it's MSNBC pandering to their specific audience. They know who watches them, and it ain't young people.
That's fair. Yeah, that's a fair point.
So that's why that's why Rachel Maddow does what she does, and talks about this, and does do a lot of fear mongering about Russia. I'm not saying that, and I want to make it clear that we're not defending Vladimir Putin, who's a terrible person.
Yeah, I mean, again, like that has nothing. Yeah, exactly. We're not, but you know, you kind of have to read between the lines and see this for what it really is. And you know, I get it. The investigation's still ongoing, but every time I see this headline that they might have uncovered something substantial, I feel like Charlie Brown with Lucy holding the football. You know, I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to try to kick the football again, and then it ends up being nothing every single time. And you know, how many more times am I going to fall on my back? How many more times as a society are we going to fall on our backs? And when they mix up a timeline, or they don't know who an email's from, or they try to target WikiLeaks again and fail, and they try to make something out of emails that weren't really anything. I mean, how miserably – and then sometimes when they do this stuff, they almost make Trump look like a victim. How miserably do you have to fail as an organization to make somebody as morally repulsive as Donald Trump, who is repulsive beyond words? How miserably do you have to fail to almost make him look like a victim?
That's you'd have to do a pretty good job at screwing something up. That's true. And I guess, look, a lot of it is, again, not talking about the important issues, which, look, that's what Jill Stein talks about. Going back to her, she talks about those issues, and she's been talking about those issues. And the thing is that she, like, as far as trying to tie her to, you know, the Kremlin, you realize that her every policy position is completely different than Putin's policy positions, right? And the Russian policy positions. So it wouldn't make any sense for her to work on behalf of them. She's anti-war. They're involved in a war in Syria, right? She's anti-fossil fuels. They're into fracking. She's anti-nuclear weapons. They have the second largest nuclear stockpile aside from the United States. It's absolutely ridiculous to think that she would be working for Russia. But again, this is part of this whole smear campaign against leftists, because she is a leftist. And so it's one of those things to try and smear leftists and to blame people that weren't involved and were running against Hillary Clinton in the campaign, of to blame them for her losing, which is not anywhere near the truth.
Yeah, well, I tweeted this a little while ago. There's a fine line between investigation and xenophobic McCarthyism, and that line was crossed a while ago.
Yeah. Hey, everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYT Nation.